Today in Avatar, we get a wild mythic artifact, a bunch of scene deck cards, a new shrine, and more, so let's break it down. Hello everyone, it's Seth, probably better known as Saffron Olive, and it's time for another daily dose of Avatar spoilers. So we've reached day 3 of spoiler season, and today we don't have a huge amount of cards by number, but we do have some really sweet ones, which means we should probably get right into it. Start talking spicy new Avatar cards. Before we do, a couple of quick reminders. First, if you need any of these cards, you can snag up from our sponsor Card Kingdom over at cardkingdom.com/MTGGoldfish. Second, to keep up on all the latest spoilers throughout the day, you should head on over to MTGPreviews.com. Anyway, let's talk some Avatar. First up today, we get a super sweet mythic artifact in Planetarium of Wan Shi Tong. It's a 6-mana legendary artifact that lets you pay 1 and tap it to scry 2. And then it says, whenever you scry or surveil, look at the top card of your library. You may cast that card without paying its mana cost. Do this only once each turn, and then it clarifies on there, look at the card after you scry or surveil. So what this means in practice, because I saw people confused by this, which I think people just assumed that part at the end was like flavor text or reminder text for what scrying means or something, because it does say it right on the card. But let's say you have Planetarium of Wan Shi Tong, you activate it, you scry 2, you put both cards on the bottom, let's say, then you look at your top card and you can play that card. Or maybe you scry 1 to the top, that'd be even better, because then you know what you're going to cast, and then you play the card. But you do the scrying or the surveilling first. So I gotta say, it seems like Wizards really loves Wan Shi Tong, because yesterday we were talking about how the Owl is probably the best card revealed from the set so far, a card that could have an impact all the way back to Legacy and just is a really, really strong card. And now Planetarium of Wan Shi Tong, our second Wan Shi Tong mythic, and another really exciting card. I don't think this one is going to have the 60 card impact probably as Wan Shi Tong itself, but I still think this card is super fun and can do some super cool things. So if you want to think about what this card is, it's essentially a very upgraded Crystal Ball. Crystal Ball, just 3-mana artifact, pay 1 tap it to scry 2. So it's a Crystal Ball for double the price, but then it's kind of mixed with a one with the multiverse, where you get to cast 1 thing for free each turn, but then it's also kind of mixed with 1 with the multiverse, and then you get to cast 1 thing for free each turn. You can't cast it from your hand, it's got to be the thing on the top of your deck, but still, together that's a pretty powerful effect. I will say, it seems like Wizards has done a pretty good job of making it so you can't just like super pop off with this. The once each turn restriction means that you can't just like tap this to scry, cast something for free, and then like Clock of Omens or Twiddle to untap it and do it again during the same turn. Although I do believe it works with things that copy the trigger of Planetarium of Wan Shi Tong. So the way this card actually works in practice is you're going to get 2 triggers out of it, right? Let's say you activate it to scry 2. That's going to give you a trigger to scry 2. After you finish scrying 2, you're going to get another trigger that says, look at the top card of your library, you can play it for free this turn. So that trigger, well, I mean, I guess technically you could copy either trigger. Probably you don't want to copy the scry 2 trigger. You probably want to copy the cast a thing for free trigger, but that should be copyable. So that's one way that you can potentially break this. Another way you can potentially break this is taking advantage of the fact that it works each turn. And remember, it works whenever you scry or surveil, not just when you scry or surveil with Planetarium's ability. So you can like tap this during your turn to scry 2, cast a card for free, and then during your opponent's turn, maybe you have a Dragon Rage Channeler, which whenever you cast a non-creature spell, you surveil 1, or Flesh Taker, whenever you sack another creature, you gain a life and scry 1, or a Jace's Sanctum, makes your spells cheaper, and when you cast an instant or sorcery, you scry 1. If you have something like this on the battlefield, you can like cast a spell during your turn, use Planetarium to cast something for free, go to your opponent's turn, cast another spell to trigger your Dragon Rage Channeler, surveil 1, cast something else for free, then go to your next opponent's turn and do it again. So I think that's the easiest way to break this card, is try to make sure that you can scry or surveil during each of your opponent's turns, especially for playing Commander, to get maximum value out of this card. So as far as Standard is concerned, I would be surprised if this was like a top tier competitive card. I kind of hope it is, because I think it's just a super cool design. And I think the fact that the free card is restricted to the top of your deck is going to make it a little safer than something like Omniscience. But we do have actual Omniscience in Standard. So if it comes to cheating something into play that's going to let you cast stuff for free, I imagine most decks are still going to Kona their Omniscience rather than Planetarium of Wan Shi Tong. So you can just cast everything from your hand for free rather than 1 thing anything off the top of your deck for free. But still, if you can like Planetarium and scry into a Vel'Gaboth or a Summon Bahamut and just play it for free, that's still probably going to win you the game. And it is faster than Omniscience played fairly, right? Like Planetarium is only 6 mana, Omniscience is 10 mana. So in theory, you could like ramp this out, play it, activate it, and get a pretty fast Vel'Gaboth or Summon Bahamut or whatever on the battlefield. I've seen some people mention that it works perfectly with Tron in Modern, which is true. Tron makes 7 mana. It is 7 total mana to play this and pay the 1 to scry 2 and play something for free. I don't think actual competitive Tron decks are probably going to do this, but it is pretty funny that you could like scry an Emrakul to the top of your deck, cast the Emrakul for free, get an extra turn, annihilate your opponent out of the game. So I do think it's a powerful effect. It's just going to be kind of a risky effect. The other way to break this card that we haven't talked about takes advantage of the fact that you essentially get 2 triggers, right? If you activate this, you're going to get the trigger that says scry 2, and then you're going to get another trigger that says after you're done scrying, you can play the top card of your library for free. What this means is there's actually a window between when you scry and surveil and when you cast the card for free, which lets you respond to that second trigger to maybe control the top of your deck. So for example, you could scry or surveil in some way, and then put the trigger on the stack that says you can cast the top card of your library for free. And then in response to that trigger, you could cast a brainstorm to draw 3 cards and then put 2 cards from your hand back on the top of your library. So you could use this to put an Emrakul from your hand on the top of your deck. Or if you're playing Commander, you could use a scroll rack to do the same thing, or Vampiric Tutor. You can just search for a card and put any card in your deck on the top of your deck, so you get to cast the best card from the deck for free with Planetarium every single time. As far as Commander is concerned, I think there's really 3 different styles of decks that would make me want to play this card. So the obvious one is decks that are actually built around scrying or surveilling. If you're playing Elminster or Egith, or a commander like Aragon that can scry whenever you cast a blue spell, or Gobez that lets you surveil whenever an artifact enters the battlefield, then I think this card's really good, because in a deck that's built around scrying and surveilling, that's where you're probably going to be able to maximize the value you get off of this card by scrying or surveilling, not just during your turn, but also during your opponent's turn. And if you can cast 4 free spells each turn cycle off the top of your deck, that is actually a super powerful effect. So it seems like a staple level card for decks that are specifically built around scrying and surveilling. The other places I think this could be good, it's also an artifact. And artifact decks are really good at making lots of mana. That's kind of one of the gimmicks of artifacts. And they have some really big, powerful finishers, right? Portal to Phyrexia, Blightsteel, Colossus. So if you're playing an artifact deck, I think this is in the conversation as well, just as a powerful artifact. Yeah, if you're playing Urza or Osgir or something, you're probably not being able to cast a free spell on each of your opponent's turns because you're not really built around scrying or surveilling. But in a deck that can just ramp this out and has artifact synergies, even just 1 free spell each turn is still pretty good. The other place where I'm sure this card is going to be busted is in colorless decks. If you think about colorless decks, they're often Eldrazi decks, plus you can only play colorless cards, so you don't have a ton of options, but you usually have a bunch of really big Eldrazi, Kozileks and Ulamogs and Emrakuls, and in a deck like that, just the potential for getting this on the battlefield in every turn for 1 mana, having a shot to scry into some 10 mana, 12 mana Eldrazi, I think makes this more than worth it, especially considering just the lack of options in colorless decks. So Planetarium Wan Shi Tong, I love this card. It just seems super fun to play with. It's going to have those really tense, exciting moments when you activate it and the top cards of your deck are being revealed and you could hit some game-ending 15-drop, or you could scry into lands and get no value out of it. So it leads to these exciting moments at the table. So I would be surprised, like I said before, if this was like a top-tier competitive card in 60-card formats. We're definitely going to try to build around it and do some ridiculous things with it, just for fun, because I think it can do some really explosive things. But I think in Commander in specific, the card's going to be really good, and it just seems super fun to play with. So another really cool design from the set. We also got a few cards from the Scene box. So these are cards from the Avatar Eternal set. So they're not standard legal. And honestly, most of them seem less powerful than the cards in the main set. But it's some stuff that's worth knowing about, specifically for Commander, because I feel like these cards, they do 2 things. One is they're going to be good in the 99 of some specific Commander decks, especially one from the Avatar set. And they also can work like less powerful backup commanders for some of the main set commanders if you're looking to power your deck down a little bit. So Toph Greatest Airbender, a 4-mana rule 3/3. It's a legendary human warrior ally. It says when it enters you Earthbend X, where X is the amount of mana you spent to cast her. So Earthbend 4 at first, then if you have a command text, 6, and then 8, and then land creatures you control have double strike. So Toph's a card that I would play in the 99 of basically any Earthbending deck, but as far as playing as my commander, it's just hard for me to see it as exciting as something like Toph the First Metalbender or Boomy Unleashed, which kind of do similar things, but then offer like more upside and more exciting abilities. So it seems like a good 99 card. And if you have like a Toph the First Metalbender deck or a Boomy Unleashed deck, and it turns out that it's just like too strong for your play group, then I think Toph Greatest Earthbender can be a way to power down that deck a little bit. But really, I think it's mostly in the 99 for these archetypes. We also have Mai and Zuko, which is kind of the same story. It's a 4-mana Grixis 3/5 legendary human noble ally. It is firebending 3, so when it attacks, you get 3 mana during combat. And this says you can cast ally spells and artifact spells as though they had flash. So it's kind of cute with the firebending, right? You can attack and make mana, and then you can flash in allies or artifacts during combat, which is a cool ability. I think this is a card that you could build around as your commander and just build like a Grixis firebending deck, but we have other Grixis firebending commanders that I think are actually even more exciting. But in the 99 of an ally deck, it seems really good. Yeah, maybe you don't do much with the firebending mana, but just a on-tribe creature that allows you to cast all of your other creatures with flash actually seems very powerful in like General Tazri Beacon of Unity, if you build Avatar Aang allies. It also seems interesting in Grixis artifact decks. There you're not going to have allies probably, but being able to flash in your artifacts in Ashnod or Ashad or Mishra also seems very good. So me and Zuko, I could see building around this as my commander, but again, I think it's more of a 99 card really. We also got another Aang, in Aang and Katara, a 6-mana Bant 5/5 legendary human avatar ally. It says whenever it enters or attacks, create X 1/1 white ally creature tokens, where X is the number of tapped artifacts and or creatures you control. So Aang and Katara, the story's kind of the same. I feel like if you want to play Bant allies, I think everyone's going to play Katara the Fearless just because people love their Panharmonicon effects. Double triggering stuff tends to be really powerful. So if you're playing Katara the Fearless, then Aang and Katara is kind of insane in that deck, right? You play it, it's going to double trigger, you're going to make a ridiculous amount of ally tokens, and it works really well with allies. Considering the allies care about other allies coming into play, if you do want to build around this as your commander, there are some ways you can maximize the number of tokens you make. Because it cares about tapped artifacts or creatures, works really well with something like Convoke that can just let you tap down all your creatures before you play Aang and Katara. Works well with vehicles that let you tap down all your creatures before you play Aang and Katara. It also is just really sweet with the old allies, because if you think about the old allies, like Ondu Cleric or Halimar Excavator, or if you're in a 5-color deck, Mandu Ambush Leader, Kutsu's Warlord, having Aang and Katara enter the battlefield and make 5 allies or 10 allies is going to trigger all of your when an ally enters abilities, and it's going to add a ridiculous amount of allies to the battlefield. Imagine just like having an Ondu Cleric, this 2-drop ally that says whenever another ally enters the battlefield, or Ondu Cleric, you gain life equal to the number of allies you control. And let's say you're in the late game and you cast Aang and Katara and you make like 10 tokens. You are going to trigger Ondu Cleric 11 times, because Aang and Katara is going to trigger it as well. You're going to have at least 12 allies on the battlefield, so each of those 11 triggers are going to gain you at least 12 life. So essentially, just by playing Aang and Katara in that scenario, you're going to gain like 120 life. Or if you have a Halimar Excavator, it does the same thing as Cleric, except it mills, so you're going to mill 120 cards. If you have something like Manda Ambush Leader, you're going to get 11 triggers that let you dig through your deck to find more allies. Or Kutzel's Warlord, you're going to put a +1/+1 counter on each of your allies 11 times. So I think this card is actually really powerful just because the old allies care about the number of allies you have and allies entering the battlefield. And this is a card that can just do both of those things really effectively. So Aang and Katara, I could see building around it as my commander just because it is a card that can trigger the old allies a lot of times, but again, I'm even more excited to play in the 99 with the main set Katara. We also got a couple of non-legendary cards from the scene box. Momo's Heist, 3-mana sorcery, gain control of target artifact, untap it, it gains haste. At the beginning of the next end step, you sacrifice it. So we've seen cards kinda similar to this in the past: Metallic Mastery, Systems Override, Sibling Rivalry. They can all steal an artifact for a turn at 3 mana. Some of them can also snake creatures. The difference with Momo's Heist is you actually get to sack the artifact at the end of turn, so it's also artifact removal. So for 3 mana, you borrow an artifact for the end of turn, and then it goes away forever. I don't think I would play a 3 mana artifact only removal spell, even with the upside that you're able to like steal that thing and maybe get a little value out of it before you have to sacrifice it. So I don't think I would actually play this card, but if your playgroup has a lot of artifact decks, then it goes way up in value. We also got Uncle's Musing, a 4 mana sorcery that has Converge and says return up to X target permanent cards from your graveyard to your hand, where X is the number of colors of mana spent to cast this, then you exile Uncle's Musings. So Uncle's Musings, it calls back to an old card, All Sun's Dawn. All Sun's Dawn for 5 mana says for each color, return up to 1 card of that color from your graveyard to your hand, then you exile All Sun's Dawn. So Uncle's Musing, basically the same idea. You play this in like a 5-color deck. I guess Uncle's Musing, you're going to cap out at being able to get 4 things back from your deck. All Sun's Dawn, you get 5 things back from your graveyard to your hand. But very similar effect. The biggest difference here is All Sun's Dawn can get any card. Uncle's Musings can only get permanents. All Sun's Dawn doesn't actually see meaningful play in Commander, even in 5-color decks, which is kind of weird because it actually seems pretty powerful in 5-color decks. So if All Sun's Dawn doesn't see play, I'm not really expecting Uncle's Musings to see a ton of play. But if you are in a permanent heavy 5-color deck like Tom Bombadil, or Child of Alara is always blowing up the board, or maybe Ramos Dragon Engine, it seems fine. Like getting 4 things back from your graveyard to your hand for 4 mana is actually pretty efficient. It's like a 4 mana draw 4 when everything works out well, just with a bunch of restrictions, right? That you need an active graveyard, it can only be permanents, but still it is a lot of card advantage for what it offers. So Uncle's Musings, I think it's kind of another All Sun's Dawn, and All Sun's Dawn, like I said, isn't really a staple, but it's not the worst card I've ever seen in a 5-color deck. As far as lower rarity cards, we got another one of the new shrines in Northern Air Temple. So Northern Air Temple, single black mana for a legendary enchantment shrine. It says when it enters, each opponent loses X life, and you gain X life, where X is the number of shrines you control. And then whenever another shrine you control enters, each opponent loses a life, and you gain a life. So essentially like this big drainy gray merchant shrine that is also like a weird, almost Blood Artist style shrine that can do a bunch of draining as your shrines enter the battlefield. At this point, we're still kind of in wait and see mode, right? We've never actually had a standard format where shrines were a legit deck, but we have often had shrines be good enough that we have been able to build decks around them and have some success with them. So we're gonna have to wait and see how many shrines do we get from the set. Are they good enough to actually build a standard deck around them? But one thing I like about Northern Air Temple is it is very cheap, and that opens up some synergies potentially in some sort of like self-bounce shrine deck, depending on the rest of the shrines that we get. But I could imagine a deck where you get 3 or 4 shrines on the battlefield, and then you Northern Air Temple, drain for 5 or whatever, the Nurturing Pixie, pick up the Northern Air Temple, cast it again for 1 mana, drain for 5 more, Sun Petal Kieran, pick up the Northern Air Temple, cast it again, drain for 5 more, and just try to burn your opponent out of the game. So I do like just the efficiency of this card. It also is probably going to be a staple in Commander shrine decks. So if you're playing Goshen Tai of Life's Origin or Hei Bai Forest Guardian, and I gotta shout out Hei Bai. We didn't really talk about this card. This is another one of the Avatar Eternal cards. I gotta say, I love that Wizards made this card. It is nowhere close to as powerful as Goshen Tai of Life's Origins. It's a 4 mana 4/4 that when it enters, you reveal cards from the top of your library to reveal a shrine and put it onto the battlefield, which is pretty powerful, right? A 4-drop that comes along with a free shine is pretty good. And then you can pay a mana of each color, tap it, and for each legendary enchantment, make a 1/1 colorless spirit creature token that can't block or be blocked by non-spirit creature tokens. So the thing I love about Hei Bai is it's not as good as Goshen Tai. Goshen Tai, it is like the only realistic shrine commander, or the only one that specifically cares about shrines. And the problem with Goshen Tai is it is just really, really pushed. Making a shrine whenever a shrine enters just snowballs so fast. There's a commander that's so strong that I think it actually makes shrines less fun because it turns them into like the arch enemy deck at the table. And I think that shrines are actually more fun when you lay back a little bit and get time to like build up your board and get a bunch of shrines going rather than just pop off super quickly and your opponents either have to kill you or you kill them. So I really like that Wizards made He's still very playable, but less powerful commander for shrines. And I think if I was going to build a shrine deck, I would actually play Hei Bai rather than go Shintai, just because I think that Hei Bai is more the power level that I'd be looking for out of a shrine deck. But regardless, if you're playing a shrine deck, play Northern Air Temple. It's really, really good in a shrine deck. We also got a couple more cards from this special sheet. Agent of Treachery, Bribery. Agent of Treachery, nothing changes, just different art. Bribery, first time on Arena, I believe, which probably doesn't really matter for 60 card formats. I guess it could be kind of funny in Historic, or like if Emrakul takes off in Timeless. If you can like ramp this out quickly and steal your opponent's big bomb, it can just win you the game. There was a time when people played Bribery like in Modern, in the distant past, but still it is possible that you can do that. But I think where this card will probably see a lot of play is in Brawl decks. In Brawl decks, it seems like a super fun card. Just being able to snag the best creature from your opponent's deck and put it into play for 5 mana, and you get to look through your opponent's entire deck to know what they're doing, is actually a pretty powerful effect. As far as draft chaff, just one piece today in KO Spirited Glider, which is just too much mana for 60 card formats, but probably fine in draft. Anyway, that brings us to the end of our daily Avatar spoilers for today. So what do you think of the new cards? Let me know in the comments, and I'll be back tomorrow to talk about even more Avatar spoilers. So until then, have an amazing day, everyone, and I will talk to you soon. Looking for even more magic? Well, you can find yesterday's spoiler video here, or maybe the Against the Odds, where we sawed our own creatures in half, but infinitely.